And sending a notice out to everybody. Let's see, where are we? Oh. I'm just checking to make sure we are on also Facebook. We are live. Okay, let's get going. Yes, there was. Hold on a second. Settings of this whole thing changed. I have to do something. Okay, yeah. Somehow the settings changed between this morning and evening. Okay, we're ready to go. Sharir Adihane Mulite Nayone Move Near Arakave Nitachanera Corona Hebe Samsada Bashana Kabija Should I be Mana Abiyama Hirabu Shri Vrindavanava Rupa Ramanatha Made Hoivea Kutri Kabeyama Bujabose Yugalaviti Rupa Raghunatha Pale Lakumorasha Ratana Kore Siddhan Narotamamudas Hati hati Ite Nayane Mabenir Goranga Boli Ame Mulakashayir Hati hati Ite Nayane Mabenir Goranga Boli Kasharir Adiyade Muli Nayane Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hati Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Krishna, Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Ram Rama, Hare Hare, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Shako, Haribo, Haribo, Jai Om Vishnupad, Hanamahan Saparamajoria, also Teda Satoshi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chalananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Jai, Isnan Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrind Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Vidas Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Caitanya, Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha, Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Sayam Kunda, Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Mathuradam Ki Jai, Jagannath Swami Ki Jai, Munamai Ki Jai, Srimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Sambhaveda Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurani Pujari Divishesha Shunyavadi Prashachate Shatarni. So before we begin class, I'd like to ask all the devotees to pray for one of my dear god sisters who is actually quite sick with COVID right now, Prafula, and pray that she can recover very, very soon. And this world is really sad. We're losing people all the time from this material world. It's really bad. Like one of my dear godbrothers, Madhusudana, he left this world, I think this morning or something like that. So, of course, we don't have to pray for him because he's a great devotee. When a great, great, great devotee leaves this world, you pray for his association and you pray in feeling separation from him. Like when we go to Prabhupada's disappearance day or any great devotee's disappearance day, we don't actually pray for them, we pray for ourselves because we are missing their association. Okay, so we have that devotee to pray for her health. She's actually a very good devotee, Srila Prabhupada, and endured so many austerities. So many of us, God brothers, God sisters, have been through Basically, we've been through a lot together through the wars, the Krishna conscious wars. So it's like an army senior fellow soldiers get sick and some of them pass away. So Madhya was very dedicated to Prabhupada's book distribution. So anyway, so let's go on to the Caitanya Caritamrta. Om Ganata Miranda Shah Gananjana Salakaya Chakshura Meditam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my divine spiritual masters, divine grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with a torch light of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, let's go. Share the screen. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. So we are starting with text 111. Let's mark this in my notes. 111. Of course, it's chapter 24, which is entitled the 61 different meanings of the Atmarama verse described by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Sanatana Goswami in Benares. So we're talking about Brahman realization, at least yesterday we were. Let's go on to the next verse. Bhakta Deha Pailavaya Gunera Smarana Guna Krishna Hanakare Nirmala Bhajana. When one gets a devotee's spiritual body, he can remember the transcendental qualities of Krishna. Simply by being attracted to Krishna's transcendental qualities, one becomes a pure devotee engaged in his service. Of course, we are our spiritual body. So, really, technically, we don't get a spiritual body. We are our spiritual body, and the spiritual body is covered right now. What is it? Covered by our material desires and lust and anger and greed and all those other nice, wonderful things. Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur has given the following summary of the verses 107 to 111. Transcendentalists on the path of philosophical speculation can be divided into two categories. The pure worshippers of impersonal Brahman, as I described yesterday, that's hell, and those who wish to merge into the existence of the impersonal Brahman, both of them like hell. When one is fully absorbed in the thought that one is not different from the Supreme Absolute Truth, one is said to be a worshipper of the impersonal Brahman. The impersonal worshippers of Brahman can again be divided into three categories. One, sadhakas, those who are nearing perfect execution of the process of Brahman realization. Two, those who are fully absorbed in meditation of Brahman. And three, those who are on the Brahmabhuta platform, Bhagavatam 4:30-20, and have no relationship with material existence. Even though the worshipper of impersonal Brahman can be highly advanced, he cannot attain liberation without discharging devotional service. Anyone who has realized himself as spirit soul can engage in devotional service. This is the verdict of the Bhagavad Gita, verse 1854. Very important verse. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasachashina kankshati samaksarveshu bhuteshu madbhakti lavate param. One who is thus transcendently situated once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So just a little story from the Caitanya Caritamrta, that when Madhavendra Puri was leaving this world, one of his disciples who was, let's say, fallen, began to quote this verse to him, Brahmabhuta Prasanama Nasashajina Kankshati. Why did he to quote this verse to him? Because Madhavendra Puri was exhibiting lamentation. Now normally, if someone's lamenting or hankering, Sochati Kongshati, that means they're in Maya. Like if I'm lamenting, oh, I lost this. I lost my best dhoti or something. Or I desire. Actually, today I was thinking I need nicer dhotis. These things look like tissue paper. Anyway, so I was desiring that. So anyway, so I was lamenting, and I was desiring. Lamenting that my dhoti had little holes in it, and desiring to have nice dhotis. So anyways, of course that's related to Krishna, it's all right. So, so if someone is lamenting and desiring, they're Maya. But Madhavendra Puri, he was lamenting and desiring to be with Krishna. What was he lamenting? He was lamenting, I have not reached Mathura, I have not reached the lotus feet of Krishna. Of course he had, but that was his vast humility. And so because he was lamenting like that, spiritually, which is not a material quality, it's actually the same things that can be used for material stuff, advancement, Maya, can be used in Krishna's service. Just like Prabhupada said, one can actually want money to use in Krishna's service. They can build temples, distribute books, and do so many things like that. But he was lamenting that he wasn't with Krishna. And his puffed up disciple, Ramchandra Puri, started to quote this verse to his guru and said, actually, basically, for all intents and purposes, he was telling his guru the guru was in Maya. Madhavendra Puri was in Maya. Not Yoga Maya, but Maha Maya, the Maya that all of us are in this world. So Madhavendra Puri, seeing that his disciple was fallen, his disciple was actually in a Mayavadi consciousness. That's why I'm telling this story, because Mayavadi consciousness means that you don't consider that emotions or anything can be spiritual. Everything is Maya. Brahma Satya Jagat Mithya. That's one of their favorite quotes. That Brahman is the truth. This world is illusion or bayad. But we understand that Yukta Vairagya, Prapanchakataya, Pujya, Harisambandha Vashna, Moksha Vipurachadi, Vairagya, Vagu, Kachate, that if one renounces things not seeing their connection with Krishna, then that is illusion. That is material illusion. And one Yukta Vairagya Muchate, if one sees how to use things in Krishna's service, then that's all right. So anyway, that's not illusion, that's spirituality. So anyway, so this devotee, or can I call him a devotee? Anyway, I guess I can. But a devotee who is mixed with desire for Brahman realization was actually advising his guru. The guru said, get the hell out of here. I don't want to ever see your face again. And that's what happens when one's absorbed in Brahman. One thinks that all lamentation, all desires, all emotions, they're all Maya. But there are material emotions that are Maya. You know, if you're hankering for anything, that's Maya. Illusion. Anyway, but use it in Krishna's service at least. Actually, one could dovetail, that's another point, one can dovetail their material hankerings in Krishna's service. So it's not all a waste of time. Let's say, you know, I want a nice dhoti so I could look nice to serve Krishna. So hopefully the people who are taking care of my clothes are not listening right now. So to attain the platform of pure devotional service, one has to become spiritually pure and attain the Brahma Buddha platform, which is beyond material anxiety and material beyond material anxiety and material discrimination. When one approaches pure devotional service after realizing Brahman, one becomes attracted by pure devotional service. When one approaches, one becomes attracted. At such a time, by rendering devotional service, one gets a spiritual body with purified senses. So this is another important verse. Rupa Goswami's verse actually. Sarvapadi Vinayana Muktam Tapat Twaina Nirmalam Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakta Ruchate. So this is Sarvapadi. When one becomes free, well, Sarva means all. Let's translate this. Sarva means all. Upadi means designations. False designations, like this body is mine, or I'm an American, or I am white, or I'm black, or now as they say, I am of color or not of color. Vinir muktam, when one becomes free of those, muktam, mukti, tatpara tvena nirmalam, one becomes pure. And then one will serve Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam. One will serve the proprietor of the senses, who is Rishikesha, and that is known as bhakti. When one's senses are pure, that's from the Caitanya Charitamrta 19:170, it's also Rupa Goswami's writings. It's in the Nectar of Devotion, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When one's senses are pure, one can render loving service, devotional service to Krishna. A pure devotee can only remember Krishna's transcendental qualities. Remembering them, he fully engages in the loving service of the Lord. So, muktapi Lila vigraham kritva bhagavatam bhagavantam bhajante. Even a liberated soul merged in the impersonal Brahman effulgence is attracted to the pastimes of Krishna. He thus installs a deity and renders the Lord service. Highly elevated Mayavadi sannyasis sometimes worship the Radha Krishna deity and discuss the pastimes of the Lord, but their purpose is not elevation to Goloka Vrindavan. They want to merge into the Lord's effulgence. This statement is quoted from Shankaracharya's commentary on the Upanishad known as the Nasingha Tapani Upanishad. So in other words, they use the worship of Krishna as a stepping stone. And also they use the worship or the service to the Guru as a stepping stone. That Prabhupada described, they would step on the Guru's head. Can you imagine that, putting their foot on the Guru's head? Because they're simply self-centered, self-interested in their own liberation. And so their worship of Radha and Krishna is called Jnana Mishra Bhakti, the desire for liberation, because they think liberation is superior to love of Krishna. But we understand love of Krishna is superior to everything. And mere liberation without love of Krishna, without service to Krishna, is hell. Because there's no, remember we talked about this? There's no action, no relationships. Because happiness comes from relationships. That's why when you buy things, they don't give you happiness, those things. That's why in Christmas, when you open up all your presents, yeah, there's a brief moment when you think that you're happy, and after that, you become miserable again. Or, like ladies, they like to shop. You know, they go car shopping, or they go clothes shopping. They think it's going to give them happiness. Just like today, I took a walk near the campus in the main street, and the largest building, the largest store of all the buildings, very expensive area, was dedicated to ladies' nails. Because the ladies are thinking, you know, if I have these nice nails, they will make me happy. Whew. Terrible. Terrible. Maya is so strong. Anyway, decoration of a dead body. It's like everybody's a mortician. Think about it. You know what a mortician is? A mortician is one who takes the body after someone has died and decorates it, and fluffs it up, puts some makeup on. And so then you look at the person in the coffin and you think, wow, looks like he's ready just to step out of there and start dancing again. So that's a mortician's business. It comes from the word mort, which means death, a person of death. So when we think that the perfection of life is to decorate this body, then we're no better than morticians. In fact, morticians at least are honest about their activity. So, on that happy note, Janma Haite Shuga Shanakari Rama Maya Krishna Guna Krishna Hana Krishnere Vajaya. Although Shukadeva Goswami and the four Kumaras were always absorbed in the thought of impersonal Brahman and were thus Brahmavadis, they were nonetheless attracted by the transcendental pastimes and qualities of Krishna. Therefore, they later became devotees of Krishna. Now, actually, I just have to be really specific. There's a difference between Brahmavadis and Mayavadis. Brahmavadis are those who are just interested in Brahman and being Brahman, and they honestly say they don't know any better than that. Whereas Mayavadis, they actually criticize, that's why they're called Mayavadis, they criticize the Lord and the Lord's pastimes and the Lord's qualities and the Lord's devotees as all being illusion. Shanaka Jera Krishna Kripaya Sarabe Hare Mana Guna Krishna Harakare Nirmala Bhajana. The minds of the four Kumaras were attracted by the aroma of the flowers offered to Krishna's lotus feet. Being thus attracted by the transcendental qualities of Krishna, they engaged in pure devotional service. We talked about this before. Tashara Vinda Nayanasha Padara Pinto Kinjaka Mishra Tulasi Makaranda Vayo Antargataswas Vivarena Chakaratesham. Oh, the volume. Okay, let me finish this. Shang Shobha Maksharajusham Apichittatan Vaho. Let me just check the volume again. Sometimes this audio settings get reset. Turn up a little bit. Okay, should be better. And the translation of this is, it's a Bhagavatam verse. When the breeze carrying the aroma of the tulasi leaves the saffron from the lotus feet of the oh, someone else says it's good. Can't please everybody all the time. You can please some of the people some of the time, and all the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. When the breeze carrying the aroma of the tulasi leaves the saffron from the lotus feet of the lotus eye, its personality of God had entered through the nostrils into the hearts of those sages, the Kumaras. They experienced a change of both body and mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman understanding. This is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam 3:15-43. Of course, that's the four Kumaras who were going to see Lord Narayan in heaven, and as soon as they went through the 6 of the pearly gates in heaven, they came to the 7th gate, and the 7th gate was guarded by Jai and Vijay, and they were stopped, and Lord Narayan came out, Lord Vishnu came out, and they saw him, and they smelled the aroma of the tulsi leaves and the flowers over his lotus feet, and they became devotees. Immediately, previously they were Brahmavadis, means absorbed in Brahman, and didn't know any better, but didn't criticize Krishna either. If they had criticized Krishna as being Maya, they would have been Mayavadis. And because they didn't criticize Krishna, they were simply Brahmavadis. Vyasa Kripaya Shukadevera Lilati Smarana Krishna Guna Krishna Hana Karena Bhajana. By the mercy of Srila Vyasadeva, Shukadeva Goswami was attracted by the pastimes of the Lord Krishna. Being thus attracted by Krishna's transcendental qualities, he also became a devotee engaged in service. We talked about this before, that Vyasadeva was Shukadeva Goswami's father. Shukadeva Goswami didn't want to come out of his mother's womb for a few years, a big, long pregnancy. But when he heard about Krishna's pastimes, he had a reason to come out. The reason he didn't come out was because he thought it was going to be Maya. When you come out, yeah, there's a lot of Maya things when you come out of your mother's womb. What do I mean by Maya things? That your mother picks you up and says, how cute that little bundle of joy is. That little bundle of joy. And the mother and father think it's so cute, and they treat you so nicely, like a king. To again be a child means to be treated like a king, and that's why Krishna has his childhood pastimes with Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj. Harer Gunak Shipta Matir Bhagavan Badaraya Naki Ajagan Mahadnakyanam Nityam Vishnu Janapriyaha. Being very much attracted by the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, the mind of Srila Sukadeva Goswami was agitated by Krishna consciousness. He therefore began to study Srimad Bhagavatam by the grace of his father. There's an earlier verse in the same chapter that says the same thing. It's a quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.7.11. Nava Yogishvara Janma Haite Sadhaka Gyani Vidi Shiva Nara Mukhe Krishna Guna Shuni. From their very birth, the 9 great mystic yogis, Yogendras, they were the sons of Lord Rishabhadeva, were impersonal philosophers of the absolute truth, but because they heard about Lord Krishna's qualities from Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the great sage Narada, they also became Krishna's devotees. So the point is, why do some become Krishna's devotees? Why do some not become Krishna's devotees? Those who do not become Krishna's devotees are offensive. They've actually heard offenses. Actually, if you hear the Mayavadi philosophy and you take some understanding of the Mayavadi philosophy, you lose your understanding or ability to understand Vaishnavism. There's this statement by many of the acharyas that if you hear the Sari Rakya Bhasha, what is the Sari Rakya Bhasha? It's Shankaracharya's commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, then you will lose your devotion. Wow. So therefore you should stay away from it. Stay away from it. Guna Krishna Hana Kare Krishna Vajana Kadasha Skande Tanra Bhakti Vivarna. In the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a full description of the devotional service of the 9 Yogendras who rendered devotional service because they were attracted by the Lord's transcendental qualities. Aklesham Kamala Bhuva Parveshya Goshtim Kurvanta Shruti Shirasam Shrutim Shutagyaha Uttungamayadu Pura Sangamaya Rangam Yogendra Pulaka Brito Davapyuvapuhu. The 9 Yogendras entered Lord Brahma's association and heard from him the real meaning of the topmost Vedic literatures, the Upanishads. Although the Yogendras were already conversant in Vedic knowledge, they became very jubilant in Krishna consciousness just by listening to Brahma. Thus they wanted to enter Dwarka, the abode of Lord Krishna. In this way they finally achieved the place known as Ranga Kshetra. There's a quotation from the Maha Upanishad. So of course, Nava-Yogendras, as I said before, the sons of Lord Rishabhadeva, who had 100 sons. The head of all the sons was Bharat Maharaj, after whom India is named. India is Bharatavarsha. That's the right name for India, the subcontinent of India. Mukshal Kangshi Yani Hayatina Prakara Mumuksha Jivan Mukta Prapta Svarupahara. Those who wish to merge into the impersonal Brahman are also divided into 3 categories: those who desire to be liberated, those who are already liberated, and those who have realized Brahman. A lot of this is repetitive, but so we'll understand and remember. Mumukshu Jagatayana Kastam Sari Jnana Mukti Lagi Bhakje Kari Krishna Ravanjana. There are many people within the material world who desire liberation. For this purpose, they render devotional service to Lord Krishna. Mumukshivagora Rupam Hitvabhutapatim Mataha Narayana Kalakshanta Vajanti Yana Suyabaha. Those who want to be relieved from the material clutches give up the worship of the various demigods who have fearful bodily features. Yeah. Such pure, peaceful devotees who are not envious of the demigods worship the different forms of the Supreme Personality of God. They don't criticize the demigods. They just don't waste time. So this is a quotation from the Srimad Bhagavatam 1:2:26. Those who actually want the highest perfection worship Lord Vishnu in his different incarnations. Those who are attracted to the materialistic way of life and are always agitated and full of anxiety worship demigods who appear fierce. Demigods like goddess Kali and Kala, Vairava, Rudra. The devotees of Krishna, however, do not envy the demigods or their worshippers, but peacefully render devotional service to the incarnations of Narayana. instead. It's interesting. Huh. I don't know how that happened. So text 124. Se sabera sadhu sanghe gunas puraya Krishna bhajana karaya muksha chadaya. If those who were attached to demigod worship fortunately associate with the devotees, their dormant devotional service and appreciation of the Lord's qualities gradually awaken. In this way, they also engage in Krishna's devotional service and give up their desire for liberation and their desire to merge into the existence of the personal Brahman. So that's the four Kumaras, Shukadeva Goswami and the Navya Yogendras. The four Kumaras, Chatushna, Shukadeva Goswami, the nine Yogendras, were absorbed into Brahman realization, and how they became devotees is described herein. There are three kinds of impersonalists: the mumukshu, those desiring liberation; the jivan muktas, those liberated in this life; and the prapti swarupas, those merged in Brahman realization. That's repetitive of what we heard before. All three types of gyanis are called moksha kankshis, those desiring liberation. By associating with devotees, such people give up the mumuksha principle and render devotional service. The real cause for this change is the association of devotees. The Krishna conscious movement is meant to attract all types of men, even those who desire things other than the Lord's devotional service. Through the association of devotees, they gradually begin to render devotional service. Self-explanatory. Aho mahatman bahudosha krutushto kikena bhat yesha bhavo gunena satsangamakyena shukhavahena krithadyano yena prashama muksha. Oh, great learned devotee, although there are many faults in this material world, there's one good opportunity. The association with devotees. Such association brings about great happiness. Due to this good quality, our strong desire to achieve liberation by merging into the Brahman effulgence has become weakened. This is a quotation from the Hari Bhakti Shododaya. In other words, a moment's association. I'll tell the story, yeah. Here's a story from the Jaiva Dharma. Jaiva Dharma is a book by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's a wonderful book that illustrates all the aspects of our philosophy in story form. Really interesting story. So once upon a time, there was this sannyasi who was absorbed in Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi. And he was on the Brahmabhuta platform. He had achieved liberation in Brahman. He was sitting, chanting, meditating, feeling very peaceful. Om Shanti, 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 very peaceful. Om. So, and as he was feeling very peaceful, not exactly ecstatic, just peaceful, because he was relieved of the material miseries. He was very expert in the Vedic literatures, and relieved of all the material miseries. That's the happiness one gets from Brahman. It's not a positive happiness. It's the negation of all the miseries, just like we have miseries, as we've described before, from the body and mind, other living entities, material nature. And so he was relieved. Wow, it's such a relief. It's like the relief one gets from eating, the relief one gets from breathing, the relief one gets after one's been sick and one gets better. That's the type of relief, not positive happiness. So anyway, positive happiness is relationships, as we said before. So anyway, so he was sitting there meditating. I think it was Benares, or Varanasi, yeah, Benares. He was meditating, and along comes a devotee doing Harinam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And he hears, and he gets the Bhakti Lata Bija in his heart, and all of a sudden he starts to feel happiness. What's happening to me? I'm absorbed in Brahman. Why am I happy? Is this mania? And he starts to feel, the stirrings in his heart, and he leaves his absorption in Brahman. and doesn't talk to the devotee. I mean, but he's just shy or something. But that attraction leads him to go all the way to Sriram Mayapur and Prajuna Kunja, it's described. He goes there and meets his guru, and he becomes a great devotee of the Supreme Personality. Got it, and uses all of his Mayavadi knowledge to make others devotees and to defeat impersonalists and materialists too. Nice story. It's in the first part of the Jaiva Dharma by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Amazing, amazing story. Highly recommend that book. Naradara Sange Janakari Munikana Mumukshacharya Kaila Krishnara Vajana. By associating with the great saint Narada, Shanaka and the other sages gave up their desire for liberation and engaged in Krishna's devotional service. Krishna Darshane Karo Krishnara Kripaya Mumukshacharya Gune Bhajikanrapaya. Simply by meeting Krishna or receiving Krishna's special favor, one can give up the desire for liberation. I give it up. Being attracted by the transcendental qualities of Krishna, one can engage in his service. Asmin Sukagana Murtau Paramatmani Vrishni Patane Spurati Atma Ramatayame Ritagato Vatchiram Kalaha. In this Dwarkadam, I am being attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who is personified spiritual bliss. Simply by seeing him, I am feeling great happiness. Oh, I have wasted so much time trying to become self-realized through personal cultivation. This is a cause for lamentation. So that's spiritual lamentation. I wasted so much time. I mean, sometimes I think like that. You know, when you sleep at night, oh, what did I do? I was sleeping at night. I wasted so much time. You know, people can think like, I wasted so much time when I could have been glorifying Krishna, bringing people to Krishna consciousness. This is the verse found in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 3.134. Jivan Mukta Aneka Se Dvi Veda Jani Vache Jivan Mukta Yane Jivan Muktam Pani. There are many people who are liberated even in this lifetime. Some are liberated by discharging devotional service, and others are liberated through the philosophical speculative process. So through the philosophical speculative process, you get Brahman, but devotional service, you get Krishna. Bhakti Jivan Mukta Guna Krishna Hana Krishna Bhaje Shuksha Gyane Jivan Mukta Aparade Adom Bhaje. Those who are liberated by devotional service become more and more attracted by the transcendental qualities of Krishna. Thus they engage in his service. Those who are liberated by the speculative process eventually fall down again due to offensive activity, offenses against Krishna. That's interesting. They fall down when they're liberated. Because they're considering Krishna's pastimes to be mundane. So unless they take up devotional service, they will fall down because it's not the natural constitutional position of the living entity. Constitution, this is Siddhanta Prabhu's. The constitution of the living entity is Jivara Swarupa Hoy Nitya Krishnas, an eternal servant of Krishna. Who is Krishna? If you don't know, you don't belong listening to this class. So here's the verse. Actually, here's the verse I often quote. Ye ne Rabban Jaksha Bimuktamanina Tvayasta Bhavada Vashuddha Buddhya Aurivi Kachena Param Padaptata Patanjado Nadratat Yusmadang Vayaha. Important verse from the Bhagavatam. A lotus-eyed one. Those who think they are liberated in this life but are without devotional service to you are of impure intelligence. Although they accept severe austerities and penances and rise to the spiritual position, to impersonal Brahman realization, they fall down again because they neglect to worship your lotus feet. And a famous verse from the Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 2nd chapter, text 32. Here's another verse. This actually verse has appeared before many times in this chapter, from the 8th 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Brahma Bhuta Prasanandam Sarchatina Kangshatina Samak Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. One who is thus transcendently situated, once realizes the Supreme Brahman, becomes joyful and never laments or desires of anything, is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service to me. This is a quotation from Bhagavad Gita 1854. And that's a repeat, but just a few minutes ago, we actually read that same verse. Advaita viti patikaru pasya swadhanna singasana labda dikshaha shatena kanapi vayam hatena dasi kritakopa paduvetena. Although I was worshipped by those on the path of monism, in other words, I was a great devotee, not devotee, but I was a great impersonalist, and initiated into self-realization through this yoga system, I have nonetheless been forcibly turned into a maidservant by some cunning boy who was always joking with the gopis. Sounds like Bilvamangal Thakur. Yes, I was right. This is a verse written by Bilvamangal Thakur. Bhakti Vale Parapta Swarupa Divya Deha Paya Krishna Gana Krishna Hana Bhaje Krishna Padya. One who has attained his constitutional position by the strength of devotional service attains a transcendental body even in this lifetime. Being attracted by Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities, he fully engaged in service at his lotus feet. So even in this lifetime, you can realize your transcendental body, and you can transcendentalize your present body. It's not that your present body becomes eternal, but it becomes purified, established in Shuddha Sattva, even though it's temporary. It's not your eternal body. Remember that. That's very important. But it becomes spiritualized, and because it's spiritualized, the example probably uses all the time. Like an iron rod, it's iron, but if you put it into fire, it acts exactly like fire after some time when it becomes red hot, and then white hot. Niroda Shanu Shayanam Atmana Saha Shaktive Muktir Hanyata Rupam Sarupena Vyavastatihi. The living entities and other potencies merge into Mahavishnu as the Lord lies down and winds up, destroys the cosmic manifestation. Liberation means being situated in one's eternal original form after giving up the changeable, gross and subtle bodies. The quotation from Srimad Bhagavatam 2:10:6. So liberation means to actually realize who you are and not identify with this gross or subtle body. Even though you may still have the gross and subtle body, it's called Jivan Mukta. But you're still having it, but you're not identifying with it anymore. Still using it to serve Krishna. Krishna Bhajir Mukha Doshe Maya Haita Bhaya Krishna Mukha Bhakti Haite Maya Mukta Haya. By opposing Krishna consciousness, one becomes conditioned and fearful due to the influence of Maya. By executing devotional service faithfully, one is liberated from Maya. That's pretty easy. Krishna Surya Samaya Haya Andhakar. Krishna is the sun. Maya is the darkness. Forgetfulness of Krishna is the absence of Krishna. When you're Krishna conscious, you can't be forgetful of Krishna. In other words, where there's sun, where there's light of the sun, there can't be darkness. And where there's darkness, there can't be the light of the sun. So darkness is simply the absence of the light of the sun. We've described this before. Ooh, this is a very important verse. Actually, we should wait till tomorrow. This next verse is verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we did 111 to 136 today. Chapter 24. Okay. Alrighty. So now we will allow all of you lucky souls to ask some questions if I unmute you. So, if you have a question, just type it in the chat window or raise your hand. Okay, Rakesh, you have a question. What's your question?
Guru Maharaj, yesterday you talked about personal Brahman. or a spiritual
Impersonal
Brahman.
Brahman.
What is that?
That's the effulgence of Krishna. Have you ever seen a picture of Krishna? Or ever seen Krishna directly? Krishna has this halo around him, the effulgence, and that effulgence is composed of jiva souls, like you and me, who decided they wanted to merge into that impersonal Brahman. The impersonal Brahman ultimately is not impersonal, it's an impersonal realization. That's why the word impersonal is used. The impersonal Brahman is composed of individual persons who are in a state of suspended animation. In other words, there's no feelings, there's no desires, there's no consciousness, they're simply floating up there around the transcendental body of Krishna. And that's what the impersonal Brahman is. And those who go there, it's described, and we've talked about this before, it's like hell. And those who go there, after a while, they fold down again because they can't be satisfied in an unnatural situation. Just like if you're in an unnatural situation, let's say, sometimes the example is what goes up must come down, but that's not always true. Let's say, I actually probably use the example about the Russian cosmonauts. The Russian cosmonauts were up in in their little cosmonaut vehicle capsules, and Prabhupada described how they were always looking down upon Russia. And they're thinking, my Russia. So in other words, they were not satisfied there. They had to come down to enjoy. You can't enjoy it being even though you're in space and it looks pretty nice outside. But ultimately you have to come down because it's not your natural position. Ultimately you come down to the Earth planet, and that's what the impersonal Brahman is. Not exactly. You can't see anything from the impersonal Brahman. It's not that you're looking up there at down to the Earth. Boy, it'd be sure nice to be back there. But you're feeling a lack. I think vakuna is the technical word. You're feeling a lack of, not a lack in terms of 100,000, but you're feeling a lack of relationships, a lack of sensory experience, a lack of personhood. And so, Aruyika Jena Param Padam, which is the verse we just quoted from the Srimad Bhagavatam, then you come down again. And usually you come down in the mode of goodness and then you engage in some material activities. Okay, so next question. Who else wants to ask a question?
Oh, glory to
So,
Srila Prabhupada.
oh, Gora Hare, it's good to hear from you in Nicaragua.
Please accept my obeisances.
Jai, oh, where's Prabhupada? So, what's happening? So, what's
I,
the
I
question?
have a question. You mentioned something about the service, and it says, I think it was in verse 135 or 130, maybe, I'm
Yeah.
not sure. But you said something about the service, and you mentioned something that really sort of like cracked my brains, like
Crack your brain.
interesting. And that was basically the type of service that people offer, even without the proper desires, the proper
Yeah.
approach, and even that has to be accepted. Could you please, Maharaj,
Okay.
expand a little bit on
Yeah, well,
that type of?
there was, I think you're referring to a particular quote from the Bhagavatam where it says, Akama Sarvakama Moksha Kamadara to Brahma Bhakti Yogena Yajeta Purusham Param. That whatever, there's several things. Whatever one's motivation is, if one is focused on Krishna's holy name and renders service, then one will actually eventually get purified. That's one thing. Another thing I mentioned about service is that sometimes, and that's from a verse that was quoted in the Caitanya Charitamrta, that some Mayavadis, they will do service or worship Krishna for the or with the ulterior motive of merging into the Brahman effulgence. So I think those are the two aspects or times that I actually mentioned service. All right.
Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
How is the preaching going in Nicaragua?
Well, we have some difficulties, because there's always some political situation, with the Sandinista government, and
Hmm.
there have been some frictions uh, that's causing a lot of unemployment, several social problems, and that maybe contributing to the fact that it's a small community here in Nicaragua, not
Hmm.
not much resources.
Yeah, not
I
very
think
rich there.
I beg your pardon.
Not very rich. The country is not very rich.
No, no, not very rich. That's you know the banana republics. It's at the center of the Americas. Sort of like the navel of the Americas, kind of. So yeah, it's a very very small country. So we have some difficulties. You know,
But you still
culture.
can, and your family's doing well there. Or?
Oh yes, most definitely. Yes.
Yeah, that's
You
good
know,
for
um,
Christian. Christian's
you know,
taking
I,
care of
I
you.
yes, I know, and I appreciate all the mercy that you have given me.
That's
Yeah, I
nice.
come from a long way. I've been there, been around, so and I appreciate the mercy.
And I
And
appreciate your determination to continue Krishna consciousness in such a difficult circumstance.
well, yeah, I guess that's the only shelter I have. I have not much options, not many options, not very many options here.
Yeah,
So,
Krishna's really
yeah.
saved you.
Oh
All
yes,
right,
definitely.
it's good. Maybe one day I'll visit Nicaragua.
Yes, I'll pray that maybe we can have your presence here in Nicaragua, and this would be a sort of like a pilgrimage place for me again in my own country. Could go to and remember that you were here. If you come,
That would be
so I'll
nice.
appreciate that. Yeah, I hope you come. I'll pray.
Well, all right. Well, anyway, speak to you later. So one other question here from Caitanya Joshi.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please
Thank you.
accept my humble obeisances on your lotus feet.
So you have a question?
Yes, yesterday we were doing the Harinam in Chapel Street in Melbourne,
Yeah.
and one of the guy was very aggressive. He drive wrong way and just come across us.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then he was very aggressive, and he say, "Okay, now too many people here because it's Saturday yesterday. There are too many people there, and then that's our motives to go there for the Harinam." And then he come and he say, "Oh, you spoiling the environment because you doing the harinams. This is like the music, or you singing, you dancing. The people
Yeah.
are getting trouble." And I say, "No, we just following our spiritual master. We following our guru, and what they say, we just following." And he say, "I belongs to Hindu family as well." And I say, "Okay, what's your Hinduism say?" Okay. And then say he was like keep going on that sort of things. And I showed the self-realizations from the Prabhupada, and I say, "Do you know this person?" I showed the photos, and he said, "I don't know." And I said, "You say you from India, and he born in India, and in 6-7 years of time, he built the 108 temples around the world, only for this Harinam purposes, and he's a spiritual master." All right. And I say, he was keep discussing, and I say, "I thought you are a lack of knowledge. I give you this self-realizations book, better you read it, and you, any doubt, you come to the Melbourne, you can see me in the Melbourne temple, or you can ask, or anyone can clarify about this." And then he was very destructive, and then it's very offensive, like if that sort of situations, how we can handle law?
I think it's better to walk away when you see that someone's offensive.
Yes.
Then we don't try to preach to him. We just stay away from him.
Okay. All right,
Yeah,
Maharaj.
in the future, if you see someone who's just like angry and offensive, and unless you happen to be Lord Nityananda, Lord Chaitanya, it's
Yes.
better you just walk away and say, "Okay, thank you."
Okay, Maharaj.
All right,
Thank you, Maharaj.
thank you. We'll see you soon. All right, so I gotta go right now. So thank you all for joining us. We'll see everybody tomorrow.